Welcome, everyone. I'm Santosh Raikar, also known as the Maintenologist. Today, we are going to dive into a critical conversation that often stays behind closed doors: why industrial transformation so often stalls. Our focus today isn't on technology or capital, but on the hidden bottleneck that sits right in the center of your organization: middle management. This is a board-level discussion about execution capacity and why the bridge between strategy and the front line is often where value disappears. Every board asks the same question: if the strategy is clear, the tech is funded, and the front line is capable, why are we still stalling? To find the answer, we have to look closely at the translation layer. This is the space where high-level vision is supposed to turn into daily action. If that translation is broken, no amount of funding can fix the execution gap. The core thesis of this session is that middle managers are being asked to do the impossible: run today's plant at full capacity while simultaneously transforming it for tomorrow. When we don't give them clear authority or the capacity to manage this tension, they become a bottleneck, not because of their attitude, but because of the system design. Success happens when we stop treating them as passive message carriers and start enabling them as decision owners. Why is this a boardroom issue? Because middle management is the filter for your strategy. They decide what gets prioritized and what gets ignored when the pressure is on. If this layer is overloaded or under-authorized, your transformation value will leak quietly for months or even years before you realize the results aren't coming. Our agenda today follows a logical path. We will start by identifying why transformation gets stuck and why middle management becomes that bottleneck. We'll look at the actual enterprise cost of this friction and, most importantly, how to redesign your operating system, provide practical tools for your leaders, and review a roadmap to make these changes stick. Let's start with part one: the execution gap. This is the space where strategic intent meets the messy reality of the plant floor. We all know the promise: better safety, higher productivity, and the magic of AI and digital twins. But it's vital to remember that technology and strategy are just potential energy. They don't actually transform a plant until they change the daily decisions and behaviors of the people working there. In reality, many plants are drowning. New initiatives are launched faster than old ones are finished. Supervisors spend more time firefighting and reporting status than they do improving systems. When executives see slow adoption, they often blame resistance, but the true constraint is usually just a lack of execution capacity. Think of your organization like a funnel. Strategy enters at the top with plenty of energy and funding, but it narrows at the middle layer. If the translation system isn't designed to handle the flow, the frontline adoption, the output at the bottom, can only be as strong as that middle layer allows. Let's define the hidden bottleneck. It isn't a person or a specific manager, it's a system condition. It occurs when strategic intent slows down or fragments because of competing demands and weak authority. You'll see the symptoms clearly. The projects are active and the dashboards are green, but the actual behavior on the floor hasn't changed a bit. We need to dispel some myths. People often say middle managers resist change. The reality is they're often just overloaded by conflicting mandates. We think more meetings will align them, but meetings without trade-off decisions just create noise. The behavior of the front line is simply a reflection of the management system we've built around them. Transformation is a game of telephone across layers. Board intent becomes executive priorities, which must become plan objectives and finally area routines. If any of these translation layers is weak, the message is lost, and the system stays exactly the same as it was before the transformation started. Middle management lives in a permanent sandwich. They feel the pressure for results from above and the pressure for support from below. A bit of tension is healthy, but unmanaged tension creates a bottleneck. We shouldn't lower our expectations. We should increase the clarity of their authority and how they prioritize their time. Crucially, you cannot bypass this layer. Executives can't manage shift-level trade-offs, and consultants can't sustain behaviors once they leave. Only local leaders can turn digital data into physical action. They're the ones who decide what stops, what starts, and what actually gets done. Now we move to part two: why the bottleneck forms. We need to understand how good people find themselves trapped in bad execution systems. From the top, managers are told, hit your production targets, cut costs, keep everyone safe, and implement this new complex digital platform. Oh, and do it all without disrupting the plan. It's a massive list of expectations that often lack a clear priority order. Meanwhile, the front line is asking for the opposite, simplicity. They want clear priorities that make sense. They want to stop the program of the month, and they want the tools and parts they need to do their jobs. They need their managers to protect them from the noise coming from the head office. When you look at the role stack, it's nearly impossible. Managing labor, handling emergencies, coaching people, and driving continuous improvement. When every single task is labeled as urgent, long-term transformation is almost always the first thing to be sacrificed to keep the lights on. This creates a capacity bottleneck. These managers aren't just supervisors. They're absorbers of complexity. If we ignore their actual workload, the transformation portfolio will simply exceed the physical and mental capacity of the plant's leadership. Conflict is built into the metrics. Operations wants volume. Maintenance wants reliability. Engineering wants project completion. Middle managers are left to reconcile these clashing goals every day, often without a clear hierarchy to tell them which one should win in a specific moment. Then there's decision latency. When a local leader can't decide whether to stop a process or defer a project without 5 meetings, the transformation stalls. This delay creates shadow processes and a loss of trust. If every decision requires a steering committee, the system itself is the bottleneck. The cost of a slow decision is more than just time. It's the erosion of credibility. We need to give middle managers guardrails, clear rules that allow them to make trade-offs at their level without fear, ensuring that escalation happens faster than the frustration can build. We often hear about change fatigue. This isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of poor portfolio discipline. It happens when we keep adding new programs but never give permission to stop low-value, old routines. Without removing the old work, transformation feels like accumulation, not improvement. Beware the meeting trap. Transformations often lead to an explosion of governance meetings and templates. If a meeting is just about reporting status rather than making decisions on resources or risks, it's a ritual that consumes capacity rather than creating movement. Listen for the language of the bottleneck. Phrases like corporate wants this, but the floor isn't ready, or every project is priority 1 are red flags. These aren't excuses. They are signals that your operating system is fundamentally constrained. In part 3, we look at the enterprise cost. What happens when strategy is converted into value leakage? The bottleneck shows up in performance as slow adoption and pilot purgatory, where programs never scale. You'll see workarounds and shadow systems. On paper, the business case looks great, but in the bank, the realized value is missing. Value leakage is often hidden in these delays and low adoption rates. Boards should be asking not just what was launched, but what value is actually captured. If the value isn't there, it's a governance problem, not a failure of the tech. There is also transformation debt. Every initiative that is launched but not fully embedded creates debt. People end up doing 2 sets of work, the old way and the reported new way. Eventually, the organization becomes resistant because it's simply exhausted by unfinished change. The human cost is high too. High-performing managers burn out from absorbing conflict without authority. Frontline workers disengage when they see barriers that never get removed. Trust declines across the board because no one believes the other layers understand the real world. Most seriously, there is a safety and reliability risk. Overloaded leaders miss the weak signals of impending failure. When leaders are stretched too thin, field verification suffers, and the transformation pressure can actually distract from basic operating discipline. Digital adoption is usually the first casualty. Software depends on disciplined data entry and response routines. If a manager can't explain why a tool matters and protect the time for their team to use it, that expensive technology becomes shelfware. Adoption is entirely dependent on enabling the middle managers. They are the ones who weave the strategy into daily routines. If the human operating system isn't redesigned to support the new tech, the transformation simply won't stick. This is why pilots succeed while scaling fails. Pilots get special attention and resources, but scaling requires the capacity of the average manager in normal operations. If they aren't equipped, the standard will collapse the moment the spotlight moves elsewhere. We must also be wary of dashboard theater. Green lights can hide zero adoption if we measure the wrong things. Reporting completion is not the same as changing behavior. We need to demand evidence of real value capture, not just proof that a task was checked off. Moving to part 4, redesigning the system. How do we turn these managers from bottlenecks into multipliers? We need an operating model shift. We must stop trying to push the program harder and start designing the execution system better. It's about building a framework that naturally supports the change. The new role for middle management has 5 pillars. They must be translators of strategy, integrators across functions, coaches for the frontline, decision owners within guardrails, and leaders who surface and escalate barriers. Leaders must make a conscious choice to stop certain behaviors. Stop launching without removing old work. Stop treating managers as mere messengers. Instead, start designing decision rights, protecting coaching time, and measuring the removal of blockers. Before you roll out a change, you must define the decision rights. Who can approve an exception? Who can stop a low-value task? Who decides if a pilot is actually ready to scale? Answering these who questions is as important as the what of the transformation. This Racine matrix shows how transformation trade-offs should be handled. Notice how the middle manager is accountable and responsible for local work sequences and routines, while the executive sponsor takes accountability for scope and risk. This clarity prevents everything from piling up on one desk. We also need to build a transformation portfolio. We have to rank every initiative by value and capacity required. If the management system is overloaded, we must have the courage to stop or sequence projects. The key question is, how much change can our system actually absorb at a high level of quality? Capacity protection is non-negotiable. Managers need time for coaching and field verification. This might mean fewer reports and fewer parallel projects. If you want leaders to behave differently, their calendars have to change first. We must give managers better translation tools. This means providing one-page cases for change in plant language, clear expectations for what changes on Monday morning, and simple rules for when to escalate a problem. Finally, we must align metrics. Don't reward a project completion if the frontline routines didn't actually change. Use a balanced view that looks at behavior adoption, barrier removal, and long-term asset health alongside short-term output. Part 5 introduces the governance tools required to make execution repeatable and sustainable. Governance should be about a cadence of decisions, not a cadence of rituals. Every level of meeting should have a different purpose. The goal is for a manager to leave a meeting with clearer priorities and fewer barriers, not just a headache from reporting the same data. At the daily level, we need a transformation huddle. This is a quick check. What blocked adoption yesterday? Which standard isn't being followed? What needs to be escalated by the end of the shift? It's about real-time problem solving. The weekly execution lock is about confirming priorities. We must explicitly deprioritize low-value work for the coming week to protect time for training and critical changes. We treat break-ins to the transformation plan with the same seriousness as a breakdown on the production line. Monthly, we review the blockers. We focus on systemic issues like skill gaps or workload. We assign owners to remove these barriers and, most importantly, we close the loop with the frontline so they see that their feedback actually results in change. The escalation ladder ensures problems are solved at the right level. Shift issues stay local, cross-functional conflicts go to plant leadership, and portfolio or funding issues go to the executive sponsors. This keeps the flow of work moving. The executive dashboard should track bottleneck indicators. The board needs to see the capacity for transformation and the speed of blocker closure. This allows for proactive intervention before transformation stalls completely. Here we see the race side for the overall system. By assigning clear accountability for things like translating work and protecting capacity, we prevent middle managers from becoming unsupported owners of impossible outcomes. We must also coach our managers. They need to understand the economics of the change, how to have difficult conversations, how to distinguish real constraint from resistance, and when to elevate an issue versus solving it themselves. The board has a specific role: asking for evidence. Ask what work was stopped to make room. Ask what barriers were removed this month. Ask how behavior is being verified in the field. This level of questioning drives accountability down through the system. As we move up the maturity curve, transformation becomes self-sustaining. It shifts from managers being overloaded messengers to becoming enabled system leaders. This maturity is built through intentional design, not just luck. In Part 6, we look at some real-world case vignettes to see how these bottlenecks appear and how they are solved in industrial life. In our first vignette, a digital tool failed because managers were expected to maintain all their old reporting while also verifying new data quality. Metrics looked green, but the floor just kept using spreadsheets. The lesson: digital fails when the middle layer is overloaded and old work isn't removed. In the second case, the reliability program failed because there was no protected capacity. Daily production pressure always won the trade-off. Without the right to choose long-term reliability over today's volume, the action stayed open and nothing changed. In Vignette 3, a lean program became theater. Managers were rewarded for green status boards, not for solving problems. Frontline employees saw through it immediately. Visual management without action is just a reporting exercise. Finally, a success story. A plant reduced its initiative count, clarified decision rights, and protected coaching time. Executives focused on removing blockers quickly. Because the middle managers were enabled, adoption accelerated and the system became credible. So when you start, in the first 90 days, diagnose the load. Don't blame the people. Clarify who decides what and protect leadership capacity. Use this time to prove that the organization can remove barriers faster than it creates them. Looking further ahead, the 18-month roadmap is about building a durable operating system. Each phase must produce visible evidence of clear decisions and captured value, eventually aligning transformation with annual planning and talent development. To summarize what is stop and start: stop calling everything a priority and stop adding reports without removing work. Start governing your transformation capacity, clarifying decision rights, and treating middle managers as the leaders they are. Success measures should include a reduction in initiative overload, faster decision-making, and verified adoption on the floor. Most importantly, we want to see higher trust and actual value captured, not just projected. I'll leave you with these board-level questions. Use them to probe the health of your execution. Are you bottlenecked at the strategy level, or is it a capacity issue in the middle? What work have you actually removed to make room for success? Here are the 5 key takeaways. Middle management is the hidden constraint, and it's usually a design problem. You must govern transformation as a portfolio against real capacity. Enablement, through decision rights and coaching, is your engine. And boards must ask about captured value and remove blockers. Before we close, please note the credits and disclosures here. The concepts presented are for educational purposes and should be adapted to your specific site context and safety requirements. Feel free to reach out to me, the Maintenologist, for further discussion. I want to leave you with this final thought. Transformation doesn't fail just because people resist change. It fails when the organization overloads the very leaders who are supposed to turn that change into a daily reality. Fix the system, and you fix the transformation. Thank you.